Let's take you to the West African nation of Senegal. Bassirou Diomaye Faye was declared the victor of Senegal's presidential election by the country's constitutional council on Friday. He's expected to take the oath of office as Senegal's youngest president on Tuesday. He has promised significant changes centered in left Pan-Africanism. He also called for the return of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso to the ECOWAS bloc. We now speak to Professor Everisto Benyera from the Department of African Politics at UNISA about this development. Prof, a very good morning to you and thank you very much for availing yourself. What do we know about this, about Senegal's incoming president?
Little is known other than that he was only given 10 days to campaign and that he did a very good job, especially among the youth who form the bulk of the voters in Senegal. And what we also know about incoming President Faye is that he never served in government, that he is somebody who is known to be very methodical with a nickname of Mr. Clean, and he is somebody who loves working the land. Every weekend he returns home to work in the fields. Every Sunday he is reported to be working in the fields, and also he is somebody who is known to have a huge and deep distrust of elites, especially and also including the political establishment. So this is somebody in a nutshell who is very anti-establishment and somebody who inspires a lot of hope, not only in Senegalese youth, not only in ECOWAS, but in Africa as a whole.
Let's speak about Senegal itself. What is it that is on his agenda, right? So what are some of the action items that he should tick off of his list, which are important for those who voted for him?
He promised to introduce political rupture. By this, he meant his intentions to weed out corruption, firstly and foremost. He promised also to restore stability and to prioritize economic sovereignty. By this, he implied that he intends to de-link from the CFA franc, which is this common currency used by 14 former French colonies in Africa and is controlled by Paris. So he says he intends to introduce economic sovereignty from French, but most importantly, he promised the youth voters that he will work on unemployment, which is currently sitting at 60% of the population, especially those under the ages of 25. And the incoming President Faye also promised to introduce a new currency and to renegotiate mining, fishing, gas, and hydrocarbon contracts. These are huge promises. And as always, we must be careful to disentangle electioneering from real politics.
Maybe let's start with the currency, right? When you speak of economic sovereignty and changing from the franc to whatever currency will be introduced, what are the chances? As you mentioned, there are other countries which are still using the CFA franc.
Chances are real that he will follow up and actually introduce a new currency that is de-linked from the CFA franc. Probably he is going to introduce a currency that is not backed by any major currency, an independent currency like any other post-colonial African country has. The challenge is that France is a huge interested party in all these developments. Some people have been so dramatic as to say that without the support of the former colonies, France will wake up as a third world country because it does not have resources of its own. So if these former French colonies are one by one abandoning France, France will be forced to move into hardline policies, mobilize its allies, especially those at the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, maybe to sabotage the young president and his huge ambitions. Stated differently, introducing a new currency in a country is an event that has been that has been seen to introduce a lot of inflationary moves, if I may put it that way. So it is a huge project to change a currency, not huge in the doing, but huge in the consequences and the resistance that will come from those that are benefiting from the status quo. You will recall that what we are entering into is a period of regime change and political transition. These are highly contested terrains, especially between the hardliners in the two camps, the incoming and the outgoing. The incoming is having a huge task, especially when it comes to the major establishment, which in this form is the international financial regime, which obviously would prefer to keep the status quo for their own benefit.
Reports suggest that those who have since taken power in Niger and another country in West Africa, Mali, have been in conversation with the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, specifically in order to move away, right, and form alliances, if you will, with Russia. And so he is also said, the incoming president of Senegal, he has said that he wants the leaders of Mali and Niger to come back into ECOWAS. And so what does that suggest, if anything at all?
It suggests a lot of background discussion and negotiations between ECOWAS members, being led by Senegal as the one of the leading nations in ECOWAS. The main reason why those Sahel countries had left ECOWAS was because there were a lot of internal discord among ECOWAS members, especially this disillusionment with the way that Nigeria is one of the leading powers was positioning itself, which was more towards Europe and less towards Africa. I do not think that incoming President Faye will succeed in encouraging these Sahel member states to come back to ECOWAS, given the perceived or real benefits which they are getting from aligning themselves with Russia. For him, the position that he is taking is what can be seen as a centralist or Nkrumahist position, where he does not want to align with the West and he does not want to align with Russia, but he wants Senegal to be very sovereign. That is a very difficult, if not dangerous position, given how real politics in international relations work, that you definitely need allies regionally, internationally, and most importantly, at the United Nations Security Council. In a nutshell, I don't think incoming President Faye will succeed in dissuading those countries to de-link with Russia and come back to ECOWAS. ECOWAS is facing a very difficult moment. I don't think it will continue in its previous form. It has to be reconstituted into something completely different.
Professor Everisto Benyera, thank you very much for your time, sir. He's with the Department of African Politics at UNISA.